My brother demanded I pay for his wedding because I make more money. When I refused, he publicly shamed me on social media, calling me a greedy sister. At the wedding, he announced, "Let's all thank my sister for funding this." Everyone turned to look at me. Then I stood up and said, "Actually, here's the truth." His bride's face went pale. I never thought I'd be writing this, but here we are. This story is about my younger brother, his wedding, and the absolute audacity he had to think he could manipulate me into paying for it. If I had to sum it up in one sentence, it would be, my brother tried to humiliate me in front of 100 wedding guests, and I made sure his new wife found out exactly who she married before the night was over. This is a long one, so grab a drink. Some background: I, 34F, am the eldest of 3 siblings. My younger brother, Luke, 31M, has always been the golden child. My parents had him later in life, and for whatever reason, they spoiled him rotten. Meanwhile, I was expected to be responsible, independent, and understanding whenever Luke got something I didn't. It started small, him getting the bigger bedroom as kids because he needed space for his toys, me being told to share my birthday gifts because he felt left out, and him getting expensive sports gear while I had to save up for my own things. But it got worse as we got older. When it was time for college, my parents paid for his tuition in full while I had to take out loans. Their excuse? "You're a girl. You'll get married one day, and your husband will take care of you." So I worked part-time, took out loans, and got through school. Meanwhile, Luke partied, traveled, and lived like a king on my parents' dime. Fast forward to now, I've built a successful career in tech. I make 6 figures, own my home, and have a comfortable life. Meanwhile, Luke? He has job-hopped for years, has no savings, and still expects everyone to fund his lifestyle. The wedding drama begins a few months ago. Luke and his fiancée, Sarah, 29F, announced their wedding. I congratulated them, sent a nice gift, and assumed that was that. Oh, how wrong I was. One day, out of nowhere, Luke called me. "Luke, hey, so Sarah and I were looking at venues, and things are more expensive than we thought." Me, "Yeah, weddings can be pricey." Luke, "Yeah, so we were thinking, since you make so much more than me, it would be fair if you helped out. You know, like covering the venue and catering." I laughed because I genuinely thought he was joking. Me, "Luke, I'm not paying for your wedding." His voice changed. "Luke, are you serious? You make more than enough money." Me, "That's not the point." Then came the guilt trip. "Luke, you know Mom and Dad can't afford to help, and Sarah's parents aren't rich either. This is what family does. You have money sitting in your account while I'm struggling." I shut that down fast. Me, "No, what family does is support each other equally. Mom and Dad paid for your college. They didn't pay a dime for mine. You've gotten more financial help than I ever have. You're not entitled to my money." He exploded. He called me selfish, greedy, heartless. He ranted about how I'd changed since making good money, how I forgot where I came from. I hung up. The next day, he went nuclear. He posted on Facebook about it. The social media smear campaign. Luke made a public post saying something like, "It's sad when family values money over love. Some people in my life could help make our dream wedding happen, but they'd rather hoard their wealth instead of supporting family. Money changes people." It was obviously about me. The comment section was a disaster. Our extended family was commenting, saying things like, "So sorry you're dealing with this, Luke. You deserve happiness." Some of them even messaged me directly, saying I should reconsider. Meanwhile, Sarah? She said nothing. I figured she either wasn't aware of the drama or just didn't care. I was pissed, but I kept my mouth shut. Then came the wedding. The wedding bombshell I had RSVP'd months ago, so I still attended, even though I was furious. I figured I'd go, stay quiet, and leave early. The ceremony was beautiful, I'll admit that. But then, at the reception, Luke grabbed the microphone. He smiled at the guests and said, "Can we all take a moment to thank my sister for making this wedding possible?" Heads turned. People clapped. I sat there, stunned. Because I knew for a fact that I had given him $0. Luke was standing at the front, smirking like he had just pulled the best con of his life. I could feel the eyes of every guest on me. Some were smiling, nodding in approval. Others looked confused. And then, there was Sarah. Her face had gone pale. I don't know what he had told her, but she was clearly just as shocked as I was. I stood up. Me, "Actually, here's the truth. Silence. Luke's face dropped. I turned to the guests and said, I didn't pay a single cent for this wedding. Luke asked me to, I refused, and then he made a Facebook post trashing me for it. Gasps. A few people started whispering. I wasn't done. He wanted me to pay for everything, venue, catering, everything, because he thinks he's entitled to my money. When I said no, he called me greedy and told everyone I abandoned family. Now, he's standing here lying about it. Sarah turned to Luke, her expression shifting from shock to something much worse, realization. I could tell. She had no idea. Before Luke could say a word, Sarah turned to me. Sarah, is this true? I looked her dead in the eye. Every word. Luke tried to grab the mic back, but it was too late. Sarah's parents, who had been sitting nearby, looked furious. One of them stood up. And that, my friends, is when the real fireworks began. Luke's smirk was gone. Sarah's father, a quiet man who had barely spoken all evening, stood up. His chair scraped against the floor, loud enough to make a few guests flinch. He looked straight at Luke and said, You told us your sister insisted on paying for the wedding. Silence. Sarah's mother clutched her pearls, yes, actually clutched them, and whispered something to Sarah, whose face had gone from pale to red-hot fury. Luke let out a nervous chuckle. Babe, let's not do this here. Sarah wasn't having it. She turned to me. He said you offered to pay, but then backed out at the last minute. I let out a short laugh. I couldn't help it. I never offered. He called me out of nowhere and told me I should pay. When I refused, he called me selfish. Then he ran to Facebook to play the victim. Sarah's mother shot Luke a look so sharp I thought he might melt on the spot. That money you asked us for, she said slowly, voice shaking, was that because your sister refused? Luke looked trapped. I watched his mind race for an excuse, but he had nothing. I glanced around the room, half the guests were frozen, the other half whispering. His groomsmen looked embarrassed. Sarah's bridesmaids exchanged wide-eyed glances. My parents? My mother had her head down, while my father rubbed his temples like he had a migraine brewing. Luke finally spoke. Okay. Yes, I asked my sister to pay. But she should have. She has the money, and we're family. That did it. Sarah's father took a step forward and spoke through gritted teeth, so you lied to us. You let us believe she backed out and left you stranded. Luke opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Sarah's mother let out a sharp breath and turned to Sarah. We're leaving. Gasps. Sarah blinked. Mom, wait, no, Sarah's mother grabbed her husband's arm. We paid for half of this wedding under false pretenses. This isn't a wedding, it's a con. She turned to me. I'm so sorry. We should have spoken to you before believing him. I nodded, appreciating her words, but honestly, my focus was on Sarah. She wasn't crying. She wasn't screaming. She was just staring at Luke like he was a complete stranger. Then she took off her veil. The bride's decision. Luke panicked. Sarah, don't do this. We can talk about it later. Sarah shook her head, her voice eerily calm. What else have you lied about? Luke laughed nervously. Nothing. Just this. It was just a small mistake. Sarah's face twisted like she had just realized exactly what kind of man she had almost married. Then she turned to me. How much did he ask you for? I wasn't about to hold back now. The full wedding. Venue, catering, dress, everything. A fresh wave of gasps. Someone in the back actually choked on their drink. Sarah's mother made a disgusted noise. Sarah let out a long breath. Then, in front of everyone, she pulled off her engagement ring and set it on the table. I'm done. The room erupted. Luke started begging. He grabbed her hands, pleading, Sarah, no, please, we can fix this. We love each other. Sarah shook him off like he was nothing. Love? You don't love me. You wanted me, my parents' money, and your sister's money. That's not love. Sarah's father turned to Luke's parents. We'll discuss the money you owe us later. Then he turned to Sarah. Let's go. And just like that, half the wedding party walked out. The fallout. Luke was stunned. Frozen. He turned to me, furious. You did this. I grabbed my purse, smirked, and said, No, Luke. You did this. And then I left, too. I found out later that the night only got worse for him. The venue still had to be paid for, and Sarah's parents weren't covering it anymore. Many guests left without giving gifts once they found out the truth. Some of Sarah's family members demanded refunds for travel expenses. Luke's groomsmen chewed him out for lying. His best man called off their friendship after realizing Luke had manipulated everyone. And the best part? Sarah's parents lawyered up. They had paid thousands for this wedding under false pretenses, and they wanted their money back. I heard through the grapevine that Luke tried begging my parents for help. My father? Refused. My mother? Cried but stayed out of it. Luke had to take out a loan to cover the wedding costs, and to this day, he's still paying it off. Final thoughts. It's been over a year now. Sarah is happily engaged to someone else, a great guy from what I've heard. Luke? He's still bitter. Still blames me for his failed wedding. But the truth is? He ruined it himself. And I don't feel bad at all. The nightmare wasn't over yet. You'd think that after all of this, the public humiliation, the wedding falling apart, and Sarah walking out, Luke would have learned his lesson. He didn't. Instead, he spent the next few months on a one-man revenge tour. Twist number 1, the fake victim act. Luke went back to Facebook, this time with a new story. According to him, I had ruined his wedding out of jealousy. He painted himself as the poor, hard-working man who only wanted to marry the love of his life, while I, his bitter and greedy sister, had done everything in my power to sabotage it. He completely left out the part where he tried to scam me into paying. And of course, our extended family, especially the ones who always coddled him, ate it up. My inbox was flooded with messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. How could you do that to your own brother? You embarrassed him in front of everyone. You could have just stayed quiet. You make so much money. What's a little wedding cost to you? Oh, and my favorite, you'll die alone with all that money and no family. Charming, right? But here's where it gets good. Sarah? She saw the post. And she wasn't having it. Twist number 2, Sarah fires back. Sarah had been silent since the wedding. No posts. No drama. Just a clean break. Until she saw Luke's lies. She commented on his post. You're seriously still lying? Let's set the record straight. And then she laid everything out. Confirmed he had lied to her parents about my involvement. Revealed he had asked her parents for money after I refused. Explained how he had already borrowed money from her before the wedding, claiming he'd pay it back. He never did. And then she dropped the nuclear bomb. By the way, Luke, maybe tell your family why I really left. Should I post the screenshots? That's when I knew. She had receipts. Twist number 3, the secret side chick. Turns out, Luke wasn't just a liar and a manipulator. He was also a cheater. Sarah had proof, texts, screenshots, even a Venmo transaction where Luke had sent another woman money the night before their wedding. She had found out after the wedding was called off but hadn't said anything publicly. Until now. Luke deleted his post within minutes. But it was too late. Sarah's comment had already been screenshotted and shared across multiple family group chats. People were furious. Sarah's parents? Suing him for the wedding money. My parents? Ashamed, but still tried to excuse it. He was stressed. Extended family? Completely divided. Some still defended him, it's not our business, but most turned their backs on him. And as for the other woman? She had no idea he was getting married. When she found out? She dumped him, too. Twist number 4, the final blow. Luke spiraled. He was drowning in wedding debt. His reputation was in shambles. And now, he was completely alone. Then, one day, I got a text. Luke, I know we haven't talked in a while. Can we meet? I need your help. I ignored it. A week later. Another message. Luke, I'm serious. I need a loan. Just enough to get back on my feet. I ignored it again. Then came the last message. Luke, if you don't help me, you're dead to me. And that's when I laughed. Because, honestly, he was already dead to me. I never responded. And I never heard from him again. Final update. Sarah? Happily married to someone else, expecting her first child. Luke? Still struggling. He burned too many bridges, and last I heard, he was working odd jobs, bouncing from one place to another. Me? Living my best life, surrounded by people who actually respect me. And to anyone who still thinks I should have just paid for the wedding? I think Luke's life is proof that some people don't deserve handouts. For a while, I thought that was the end of it. Luke had ruined his own life, and I had moved on. But then? He tried to drag me down with him. The last desperate move months after his wedding disaster, I got a call from my mom. I almost didn't pick up because I knew it would be about Luke. I was right. Mom, he's struggling, honey. He lost his job, and his landlord is kicking him out. He just needs a little help. I sighed. What do you want me to do about it? Mom, he's your brother. Can't you let him stay with you for a bit? I laughed. Not even sarcastically, genuinely laughed. Me, you want me to let him stay in my house? The brother who tried to publicly humiliate me? Who called me greedy, lied about me, and cheated on his fiancée? That brother? Mom, he's learned his lesson. I knew that was a lie. So I asked, has he apologized? Silence. Then, a week, well, he's embarrassed, that told me everything. He still thought I owed him. So I told my mom, he can figure it out like I did. I'm done. And I hung up. Luke's big mistake apparently, that wasn't the answer he wanted. Because not even a week later, I got an email from my workplace's HR department. Subject line? Urgent, fraudulent complaint. I opened it, and my stomach dropped. Some anonymous person had sent an email to my company, claiming that I was involved in financial misconduct and had a history of workplace bullying. They even attached fake screenshots of emails I had supposedly sent, making shady business deals. But the problem? The screenshots were badly edited. Like, laughably bad. Wrong fonts, mismatched dates, and even one email where my name was spelled wrong. HR immediately flagged it as fraud. But I wasn't just going to let this slide. I wanted to know who did it. So I had a friend, who works in IT security, trace the IP address of the email sender. And guess what? It was Luke. My turn to destroy him at this point, I was done playing nice. He had tried to ruin my career. So I did 3 things. 1. I filed a police report. I took every piece of evidence, emails, IP address proof, everything, and reported him for fraud and defamation. Since he had falsely accused me of crimes, this wasn't just a slap on the wrist. This was serious. The police contacted him for questioning, and he panicked. 2. I told his landlord everything. Remember how he was about to get evicted? Well, I reached out to his landlord, who I happened to know because small world, and casually mentioned that Luke was under police investigation. Landlord? Didn't even wait for the end of the month. Luke was kicked out within a week. 3. I sent the proof to Sarah's parents just to make sure he'd never crawl back to them. I sent everything, his fake complaint, the police report, and even a written statement from my company confirming it was fraud, to Sarah's parents. Their response? We'll make sure no one in our circle ever helps him again. That meant no money, no connections, nothing. The final blow with nowhere to stay, no money, and now a fraud case hanging over his head. Luke tried one last thing. He called me. Begging. Luke, please, I messed up. I'll do anything. Just let me stay for a bit, just a couch, a few days. I let him talk. Then, I said the most satisfying words of my life. Me, you're dead to me. And I hung up. After that? Luke vanished. No one in the family has heard from him in over a year. Last I heard, he was couch surfing, jumping from friend to friend, burning bridges one by one. Meanwhile, I'm thriving. Living my best life. And I have 0 regrets. Final thought: some people say family is forever. But I say, not when they try to destroy you. Luke thought he could use me. Thought he could steal from me, ruin my career, and get away with it. Instead, he lost everything. And honestly, I'm at peace.